C-CASCADES is an EU Marie Curie network consisting of 9 universities as well as 4 different non-academic partners. And the aim of this project is to better understand the transfer and processing of carbon along what we call the Land-Ocean Aquatic Continuum, or LOAC for short. Now, the LOAC, in simple terms, is basically the transfer of carbon from land through inland water bodies like lakes, reservoirs, and estuaries, and rivers through to the ocean. We understand that in inland waters, a lot of things happen. So some of the carbon is very reactive. So in lakes and rivers, for example, it can be processed and evaded back to the atmosphere before it reaches the ocean, or even buried in lake sediments. So the first part of my project is to try to estimate the flux of CO2 from lakes to the atmosphere in the Boreal region. And as you can see, this is the Boreal region here, and this is basically the extent of the Boreal forest. So we estimated a total FCO2, or CO2 evasion, of 189 teragrams per year from the entire Boreal region. I mean, that might not mean very much to most people, but what is important is the relative quantity, and this is about 2 times the size of previous estimates. And this can hopefully help us better constrain the global carbon cycle and budgets. After having an estimate for the current CO2 evasion from Boreal lakes to the atmosphere, we then used future projections of terrestrial net primary productivity and also precipitation to drive future CO2 evasion. And what we found is that under the most extreme scenario of the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, the IPCC, we find that CO2 evasion increases significantly over the 21st century. So we find a 37% increase by 2030, we find a 49% increase by 2050, and finally by 2100 we find a more than 100% increase in CO2 evasion. And this is largely driven by increasing terrestrial NPP. So the second part of the project is moving to the tropical region. So it's the Amazon basin, the largest river in the world. And what we're particularly interested in is the effect of dam building. So as you can see from this map here, we're actually experiencing a second boom in global dam construction, but particularly in tropical regions. And this is going to have an impact on many different things like hydrology and ecology. But what we're particularly interested in is the impact on the carbon cycle. So what we're going to do is implement the impact of damming into an Earth system model and then try to assess the impacts that this has on the carbon cycle in inland waters in the Amazon basin. It can better inform policy decision making. So for example, at the moment, as I said, a lot of dams are under construction and are planned to be built. But if these have overly negative consequences for the carbon cycle and also hydrology, then it might make us rethink. This is really biogeochemistry, so it's really the interface of 3 different fields. And I think that's why it's one of the reasons it's very, very challenging. You can't really blag your way through. The other really important thing is the network and the people you collaborate with. So a good example so far is that I recently produced a paper in Global Change Biology, and that was really a collaboration between ULB in Brussels, but also Uppsala in Sweden and Exeter in the UK. And we worked as a group of about 4 or 5 people and produced a really nice paper out of that.